Okay, so we are at Discovery 55. This was the last scene, was how Esther managed to uncover and accuse Haman right in front of the king during a banquet, and Haman was hanged at the gallows that he had actually prepared for Mordecai. So after that, it would seem as if everything is peaceful already, right? But yet there is still the edict. Remember the edict that was signed with the signet ring? Now, normally when edicts are signed, they cannot be reversed. So let's see what happens next. So I'm going to invite Tim May to discuss about the chapter 8 and 9, Esther's next request to the king. Okay, so we're going to do that. And of course, there's a question about whether what she's going to do next, is it in defense or is it in revenge? And finally, was the commandment number 6 violated? So we, hi.
I'm from Team A, and first I'm going to summarize chapter 8 and chapter 9 first. So that now that Haman is already dead, so the queen revealed his true identity to the king, and she tells the king that how she is related to Mordecai. And Queen Esther begged the king to reverse the order that Haman had made previously. But the king gave the queen and Mordecai his ring to do whatever suitable in this situation. So they issue a new order that to allow all the Jews to unite and to attack and kill their enemy in a way of like defending themselves. On the same day as Haman's decree, big appointed day, where both of the decree were taken into effect, and both Jews and the enemies are ready to start the wars. And the enemy was so confident that the Jew will lose. But however, the Jew will overpower them, because at this time, Mordecai was so famous, and all the officers, all the powerful members are siding him. And in Susa itself, they have killed 500 of men, and also Haman's 10 sons. But they just killed, they didn't take any of their belongings, their properties. Now that they have done what they want to do, they need to report to the king. And so the king asked them further, is there anything else you want? So Queen Esther requests, can you grant us another day? The same order. So the next day they can kill some more. And also they want to hang the Haman's 10 sons, just to, I think, to warn everybody. And so the next day, they kill another 300 men in Susa, and also another 7,500 more in other provinces. They just killed and they didn't take any of their properties. So after these 2 days of killings, Mordecai has declared that they're going to make this as a festive, and they're going to celebrate their victory from their enemy. So they name this festival as Purim. And some of the Jews in a rural place still celebrate this festival until this day. Our assignment is asked whether is this a defense or revenge, and whether it violates the commandment number 6. And the commandment number 6 is you shall not murder. Okay, first let me introduce, there's a difference of this murder and killing. This was suggested by our leader, Mayong. So now there's 2 words. One is hara. It means kill. Normally in the war, in the Bible, they use this word. And another one is redza, means murder. And this word they use in the commandment number 6. You shall not murder. The murder is come from this Hebrew word. And this word is unlawful killing, like killing an innocent blood. Okay, so based on these 2, and because mostly in the Bible, they only use the word hara during wartime. So our answer to this commandment, whether is it violated, then I would say no. For the first day that they kill, is obviously that they kill in defense, but also in revenge, because otherwise, if they don't do this, they are going to die. And further, because the Jews at the time, they are following Moses' law, which you can see from the screen. If your enemy kill you, you need to pay them an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, a foot for a foot. That's why it's like, it's not surprising.
I believe that Celine has done a good job coming out with the slides as well. Now, Queen Esther, after having got Haman hanged already, she has another mission, okay? And the first mission she has was, of course, to reverse the edict, the law that says that all Jews will be killed when? On the 13th day of the 12th month. March the 7th, isn't it? NLT version would be very, very up to date in the sense that they even go into the Roman calendar. After everything was done, the king thought everything is settled. But Esther comes to the king again. And I like the part where she weeps and she begs for mercy. And also, she says this in verse 5. Okay, this is some good tips for the women. Says this in verse 5. If the king is so inclined and if I have met with his approval, and if the matter is agreeable, in other version it says that if the king feels it's right, and if I am attractive to him, let an edict be written rescinding those recorded intentions of Haman. You know, Esther is just not a beauty, but beauty with brains. She was very smart to know how the law works. And the king says, hey, look, Haman is dead. What? I've given everything already. What else do you want? And then she talks about her people. Okay, so a new edict was actually formulated. This is in the 3rd month. The edict is sent out. And throughout the whole land, many of the resident people pretended to be Jews because of the fear the Jews had overcome them. Means that the Jews now have gained even more power. The region officials, the province officials also sided with Mordecai because Mordecai is today a very powerful second man of the king already. So here they are now going to either defend or revenge, okay? Team May says it's defense. How about the others? They were going to strike the enemies, the people that had done wrong to them. If you go to Esther chapter 9, verse 5, the Jews struck all their enemies with the sword, bringing death and destruction, and they did as they pleased with their enemies. This kind of action, what do you think? After a preemptive strike, this kind of war terms.
Attack before the enemy attacks you.
Okay, attack before the enemy attacks. The best form of defense is attack. I believe that was what was happening. It was more of defense. It was more of the fact that if you don't kill, I don't kill you, you are going to kill me. Right? So now Esther has the opportunity to wipe out the enemy. And that was exactly what they did. 300, 500, I believe it is 75,000 and not 7,005. I don't know. My version says 75,000. 75,000 is a lot. In Susa, it's not that much, 300, 500. But here, for the rest of the other regions, they've killed 75,000. That means including Persians. But one thing they didn't do was, they didn't take the property. When they were allowed to take the property with the edict of the king, they did not do it. And they did it on the very specific day, that is the 13th day of the month of Adar. And how do you come to the conclusion? It's March the 7th in NLT version, right? Because they align the Roman calendar with the Hebrew calendar, and they come out with that on that day was March the 7th, 473 BC. Okay, that is the reason why today the Jews, not only in rural areas, the Jews all over celebrate this thing called Purim, because Pur was the lot that Haman threw to get to this date. Jews will definitely celebrate it up to this day. And how did they celebrate it? They read the book of Esther. They celebrate the death of their enemies by feasting and rejoicing. Linda also mentioned this can take as a point that they are just defending themselves, okay? Right? So they are not plundering. They are not doing it by malicious intention. They are basically defending themselves. They didn't even want to take the property. Now, does that help you to think? Huh? I was just thinking, Then can we conclude a bit why Mordecai hid his identity and Esther's identity? To survive? To stay alive. Why? Yes, because the Jews had many, many enemies. Okay, the Jews had many enemies, and Mordecai knew that. They had a lot of enemies, and he had to be very careful, especially bringing Esther into the palace. He had to be very careful. Definitely, she will have a lot of enemies. She will have a lot of enemies already because she's beautiful. Can you imagine if she's beautiful and she's Jew? Then her life would really be at stake. So was Commandment 6 violated in chapter 8 and 9? Right? So thank you for sharing the two Hebrew words. Yeah, I believe our Hebrew specialist has just joined us. So Commandment 6, the different word for murder and kill. Does that justify for Esther and her gang to kill? What do you guys think? Killing in defense? Peter says no, doesn't justify. So what would you have done, Peter?
So far, no matter whatever the reason, killing is something that is not acceptable, because I've been taught that, you have to forgive your enemies. So if they have killed my son or they have killed my children, I should not do anything to my thing. I have to love them as though I'm loving my other children. So it's sort of very difficult for me to understand the logic behind the justification of killing.
Okay,
That is my
all
thinking.
right. Okay, poor me. Okay, all right. Let's go to the next group, okay? Thank you so much. Let's go to the next group. So some of us don't agree. Some of us believe that is a violation of the Commandment 6. But Celine has mentioned that the two Hebrew words are different. If you don't agree with killing, then unfortunately, you will know that God also kills. Okay, the next assignment, which is, very interesting. That will perhaps help Peter to answer his question. Team Alex, how does Jesus' teaching about revenge contradict the practice? Which do we follow? So we are going to Matthew 5:38 to 42.
So if the practice refer to Esther taking revenge on Haman, then my response is I don't see it as Esther taking revenge on Haman, but more asking pardon from the king, where the signs, what backs me up is that they didn't kill and then take everything, they just defending the book of Matthew. If it refers to the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus was and is still teaching us how to think and react, which is on the basis of love. So now I'd like to pass to Sister Cindy for the continuation.
So does it mean that Esther, that during those times, they didn't act according to love?
Esther's motive initially was to save her people because of the edict that was out already. So her motive was that she wasn't out like I must kill Haman, I must kill Haman, I must kill Haman. So that's where I'm going at.
Okay. So if you were there at that time, you wouldn't kill because of love? Or you would kill because of love? Which one would that be?
If I'm
does it mean that because of love we don't kill, or because of love we kill? If somebody came to my house and want to murder my husband, I would take the rifle and shoot.
Same goes with me.
Yeah. So do you kill because of love, or do you not kill because of love?
Okay, I'm just going to talk on Matthew on his own. Overview is that we are asked to avoid resistance and to let God do the mitigation for us. And we are supposed to love our oppressors. Now, my question now is it easy to love our oppressors? Generally, or to my sinful self here, I think retaliation is what a lot of most people expect. They will react when they are confronted with insult. But Jesus is telling us we need to give up any sense of entitlement to personal revenge. He's telling us to give up. But here we are saying, no, must revenge, must go. By asking the disciples to turn the other cheek, he wants the disciples to be motivated by love and to forgive the offenders. So that he asked them to turn to the other cheek. But like I said, in reality, I think turning to the other cheek requires a lot of help from up there.
Yeah.
You know, responding to hatred with love is something that is, I would say, quite difficult to achieve. I mean, personally, lah. So it has to be the work of like a supernatural power of the Holy Spirit in us. I am not sure about loving our enemies, that part lah. If we try to resist retaliation and if we focus on God, that is, we allow Him to do what is right on our behalf. If we allow God to do it, so our anger, our stress level, and our frustrations are more or less, I would say, is lessened. Practice resisting retaliation. I think it's easier to do than to love our enemies. I still cannot reconcile that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody?
The law that was actually that law, and which one? An eye
The
for an
eye
eye.
for
It
an
was
eye?
actually, yeah, it was actually one of the laws written in Exodus 21:24, right? Chapter 21:24, eye for an eye. But if you look closely at that text in Exodus itself, it actually doesn't mean that, okay, you hurt my eyes, I want to hurt back your eyes. Okay, it was actually something that was, it was a formula that the judge would use to proportionate punishment or compensation. Okay, let's say you hurt my eye, perhaps like today lah, maybe if you hurt somebody, you probably have to pay for their medical bills. You know, it's not like taken literally. But again, even Jesus here says that, you know, is also, Jesus sort of expanded this thing. As Pastor has taught us, Jesus' word definitely will override everything. He wants to his disciples to respond when they are offended. You know how they should respond. I think Jesus' way is, he will. I would follow Jesus, his practice. I mean, what he said.
Really, Angela, very good exegesis. Because if you actually read the whole chapter of Exodus 21, okay, you cannot take it like an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Okay, the whole idea is that every form of crime, the counter punishment should be equal. All right. So is it equal justice or not? So God, now, by the way, Angela, the Torah was written by Jesus. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Exodus was God's right command. Deuteronomy is Moses reminding the people, but Exodus is directly from God. Okay, but the basic idea is, it's not so much, if I kill you, or if I blind you, one eye, I must take out one eye. What happens if a blind person has no eyes? How are you going to punish him? If I got no leg and I break your leg, chop off your leg, how am I going to repay my leg to you? Correct? It's basically like what Angela says, equal. Right? The magnitude of punishment must be in line with the severity. And that one has already become law, and in the courts, they call it what, lex talionis in Latin. In the sense that if you go to court, and I like what Peter has just said there, if you go to court, and Exodus 21 is basically judgment. If you read Exodus 21 verse 1, it's not talking so much about personal. It's talking about how the community should be judged. That's why it's called judgment, ordinances, or even statutes. I remember much earlier there was one guy say, why statutes? Why ordinances? Because it has become sort of law for that community. Right? So even though, let's say, somebody killed my husband, all right, and I didn't do anything about it. I just say, never mind lah, forgive lah, it's okay, I can get another husband, don't worry, just go ahead and kill my husband, right? And my husband dies, and the guy is arrested. Do you think the courts will let him go? There's still justice in the courts, all right, So Exodus 21 is just basically talking about the community, about the community justice. That if somebody does this, the judges will decide. Okay, a tooth for a tooth. So it's actually talking about two guys that fought and then go and kick one pregnant woman. You really read the whole Exodus 21. This verse itself came out because two guys fought and went to kick a pregnant woman, and she delivered a premature child. So then, to the extent of the injury, You either go eye to eye, that means equal, hand to hand, foot to foot, or burn to burn, wound to wound. But Hollywood and humans have taken it to mean, okay, if you take out my eye, I will take out your eye. If you take out my hand, I will take out your hand. That means actual physical. Maybe in those times they did, but today, of course, definitely we can't do that. So that was more for the nation's laws. Okay, the nation's laws. The life for life, tooth for tooth. It is actually talking about the poor mother who delivered because two guys knocked into her. Right? But now, Jesus is going to mention that again in Matthew 5:38. An eye for an eye. He said, you have heard that it was said. Jesus did not even refer to the Bible, to the Torah. He says, you have heard that it was said. Okay? An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. So he does mention that. But remember, those who have attended Dr. Fanwa's session on Sunday, when we talk about Bible interpretation, there's such a thing called context, right? The context is very important. The context of Exodus 21 is very important. The context of Matthew 5 is also very important. Okay, Matthew 5 is all about what? Those who are already advanced Adventists and Christians, Matthew 5 is about what? What is it called?
Sermon on the Mount.
Yes, it's called the Sermon on the Mount. It's probably the longest sermon that Jesus ever preached. In today's world, it would be a motivation seminar. Who was Jesus speaking to? Specifically, the message was for?
The disciples.
Okay, all right. He was talking to people like you and me. And if you actually go through the whole chapter, because you got to read up, you know, you got to read at least 20 verses up and 20 verses down before you can even conclude what is Jesus talking about. So if you tell me, oh, because of love, you must prove to me that it was because of love that the action was done. Okay, so if you want to turn to it. I still have a little bit of time because I think it's so important for us. Now we know the context of Exodus 21 already, the eye for an eye one. Okay, everybody, if you don't know, you go back and read. Now we go to Matthew 5, which I believe that for all Christians is such a common chapter. Because why? We call this the Sermon on the Mount. Some of us can even memorize, blessed is this, blessed is that, blessed is that, blessed is that. Okay? Jesus is now going to revolutionize his disciples. Imagine he is talking to Utama Beacon. Imagine that. Okay? First thing he does is he tells about the salt and the light. Okay? You are the salt of the world. So when he says you are the salt of the world and you are the light, I would feel that it's specifically talking to who?
His disciples are those who follow him.
Yes, all right? Because
his followers.
Yeah, normal people won't understand what he's talking about. He says you. That means Utama Beacon. You are the salt. You are the light of the world. You have to be different. You see, when the laws came out in Exodus 21, God also wanted to create a special people. Around the whole other nations were doing all sorts of things. Okay, but he wanted the Israelites to be a special people. That's why he enacted the laws, including the 10 Commandments. Exodus 21, Exodus 20 is before. Exodus 20 is what? 10 Commandments. Okay, Exodus 21 expands on the 10 Commandments. So here, if we were to go up a bit to verse 17, okay, Matthew 5:17.
Okay, Matthew 5, verse 17. Don't think that I came to abolish the law or the prophets. I did not come to abolish, but to fulfill.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So you have also heard, Pastor has taught us what is the meaning of fulfilling. Right? That means Jesus did not come to abolish. So we cannot take away Exodus 21. Okay? We cannot say we follow Jesus, but we don't follow that. Right? I did not come, but I came to fulfill. And Pastor has taught us that it means how to interpret. Okay? And interpret and show you how it's done. Because heaven and earth will pass away, but not even the smallest letter or stroke of the letter will pass from the law. We cannot do away with the law. I know some people don't agree with me here, but we cannot do away with the law. Okay, because Jesus says not a single stroke will go away. And this is Jesus, red letter. And anyone who breaks one of the least of these commands will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. So let's move down a bit and go to verse 20. Thank you, Pastor. Go to 20. Angela, can you read 20?
Okay, for I tell you, unless your righteousness surpasses that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never get into the kingdom of heaven.
Okay, now this verse itself will give us an idea. Why is Jesus saying all the things he's going to say later? What does that mean?
I think Jesus expanded on the law,
Yes.
so much so that, right, he expanded. So he
Yes.
expects us to
Yes.
actually go beyond that, you know, just
Yes.
not just following the law, you know, but to go beyond that.
Yes, you are so correct in the sense that that's why he already gave the hint in the beginning. That because you know why? In those times, before Jesus came, who were the great rabbis and the great teachers?
The scribes and the Pharisees.
Correct.
And they also keeping the law, and they were keeping the law, right?
Yes.
They were keeping the law, correct.
Yes. Correct. They're keeping the law because after they came out of exile, remember, after they came out of exile, they became the people of the word. And they studied so much for 70 years, they edited so much, and they didn't have sacrifices then, so they focused on the law so much. And we know that when Jesus came, they were so into legalism, so into the eye for an eye, blah, 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 so into it. But Jesus tells his disciples, your righteousness must go beyond that. Utama beacons righteousness. I'm not saying righteousness means what you do, you know, how you dress and all that. Your righteousness must go beyond that. But this is what I'm going to tell you, right? So then he goes on and he talks about murder. He talks about adultery. And what's the difference between the 10 Commandments and what Jesus is talking about? Here, if you read. Over in the 10 Commandments, it says, you must not murder. Okay? And what Celine has told us. Over here, what is Jesus saying?
So even if you're angry with, you cannot even be angry with your enemies.
Because
Something
why?
like that.
Because how does murder happen? I feel like killing my dog, something like that, right? Do you say that? I think you have been psychopath to say that. Yeah. It has to build up within you, isn't it? All right? Anger has to build up within you, and you fester it until the devil can take you away and influence you, murder. So yes. Jesus is saying the thought, the seed of evil, the seed of evil. Because after that, he goes down to say adultery. Right? Adultery. Even you don't commit it, you just look at a beautiful woman like Esther, or have untrue thoughts. You're already committing adultery. He's talking about us guarding our minds, right? And then after that, he comes down, right? It comes down to the crux of it. Okay, 38. You have if you say an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, okay? But I'm telling you, if somebody wants to strike you on the cheek, you give another cheek. What is Jesus teaching us here? Like Cindy said, it's so difficult to do, but why is Jesus telling us to do it?
Tell us not to retaliate.
Why? Because
it's not literal that, you know, somebody slap you, you let them slap. I mean, that's stupid lah. So actually, it's really not to retaliate. It's if somebody do bad things, you know, how you react to it. You really harbor on this thing that, you know, that somebody is, you know, doing something bad to you. I know that we shouldn't pursue the matter, like, you know, retaliate, and then actually there's no end to it lah. Okay, so Cindy said forgiveness is very hard. Here, Jesus does not tell you to forgive. He just asks you to do it. Okay, it's more the action. Now, I have to finish off. I just want to show you this because I want to make Christianity or our faith practical.
I know one of the guys who helped. One of those black guys I know.
All right, okay, yeah, this is in London. Practical Christianity, right? It's so easy to say forgive. You have to forgive and you have to forgive. But just now, Peter said a very, very important thing. Is that he says, I cannot forgive. Now you change your mind. I cannot forgive if they killed my daughter, my children. But I will not do anything because the courts will do it, right? The courts, the judges will do it in Exodus 21. Okay? What Jesus is telling us to do is to just act because look at this. I mean, I have to show this, and I want to thank Adam for putting it in the Facebook, and I saw it. This is recently, right? 15th of June, isn't it, Adam? This is in London, when they were having the anti-racism protests, which from America now has spread on to Europe. And then there was these black protesters, they call them black, you see, black protesters who carry injured white men, because they have to clarify, okay? Black protesters against racism. White men is, they say is far right, far right. It means they are for. They are not like Adam, they are for white supremacy. And they came and they got into a tussle and the white man got injured. This black man, Patrick Hutchinson, also a bodybuilder like Adams, and he just saw the situation was getting so tense. He just picked up that enemy of his and he carried him. You should watch the video. He carried him all the way out of the crowd, you know, the very, very violent crowd that was building up. I don't know what happened to the white man, but what kind of result would this give? And this was actually tweeted and went viral. And when they interviewed this guy, Patrick, he just said one thing. They said, how you feel and all this sort of thing, you know, do you feel angry and all that? He says, no, I just did what was the right thing to do. That's all. So whether we forgive or, you know, you have to forgive and all that, Jesus is just telling you, do what I tell you to do, okay? Because in the process of that act, so I believe that Jesus is telling us for our own good, Don't think it's so easy to forgive, okay? It's not, okay? But during that process of it, you will come to the conclusion that it's not worth it, to be a better person. Right? There's a saying, the one that angers me conquers me. And Jesus didn't want that to happen to the disciples because they had a lot of enemies as well. They had the Pharisees waiting to pounce on them. They had the Romans waiting to convict them and sentence them to death. All right? So he wanted to teach the disciples in that hostile situation, just like what this guy did, Patrick Hutchinson. Right? The police could have arrested all these black guys, you know. I don't know whether they did in London. But he did what was the right thing to do. That's when Jesus says, love your enemy, pray for those who persecute you. Even if you don't feel like praying, pray for my neighbor who's been harassing me or something like that. Then perhaps the change comes within us. The other people may not change. Then you say, then how? Of course, revenge belongs to the Lord. That's the crux of it.